what was really interesting was I was talking with all these other young change makers from across the world. And at first I felt very out of place. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not entirely sure why I'm here. I'm sort of just winging it as I go. But talking with these other young people who I just assumed had it all together and they were just, all their ducks were in a row, um, they also didn't really know what they were doing. That is the I guess the issue with trailblazing is that you are blazing the trail, so you don't actually have a set
Mm.
direction. And that was really comforting to find out that there were others as well who are also quite ambitious and were doing really cool things in their community who, yeah, didn't have it all planned out. They were just figuring it out as they went.
Before she was a systems engineer, Sarina Todd noticed something was missing: women in STEM. To inspire more girls to choose a career in this field, she co founded Women in STEM New Zealand, a platform that provides support and potential pathways to champion diversity, inclusion, and the next generation pursuing their own passions. Thank you for joining Lynn Foley, host of Remarkable Women, Powerful Stories, as we hear from Sarina about her journey.
Starting from little Sarina, I grew up in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I was a relatively cheeky, curious kid. Had quite a privileged upbringing as well. Um, yeah, went through my schooling without too much issue, and although started to notice in high school when I was picking my, I guess, yeah, elective subjects,
Mm.
doing physics, calculus, all the science and math subjects, that the numbers of women compared to men were dwindling. And then in my final year of high school, yeah, definitely felt like an outlier there. Um, Actually, as part of that, and I'm sure I'll probably talk about this more a little bit later, but co-founded Women in STEM New Zealand in my final year of high school. And then moving through to university, I studied a Bachelor of Mechatronics Engineering at the University of Auckland. And yeah, did all through my 4 years there, did a lot of extracurricular activity, if you can call it that, or sort of pursued the things I was passionate about, which was getting more young women into STEM.
Mm.
And jumping to where I am now, after finishing my degree, I was looking for a job in a larger city because having grown up in Auckland, New Zealand, it was getting a little bit small for me. So I was hoping for some bigger opportunities and started looking at Australia because that was the logical jump for a lot of New Zealanders or Kiwis.
Mm.
And yeah, so now I'm working as a systems engineer at John Holland on the Rail and Transport Network in Melbourne, Australia. That's where I am now.
Mm. Wow. So in a few short years, that's how far you've come. Back when you were small and growing up, did you who do you think influenced you most?
Oh, good question. I think I was very fortunate to have loving parents, and they, yeah, raised me well and influenced me quite a lot. My dad was an engineer, so much like I am now,
Mm.
and he always emphasized the importance of doing well in science and maths because that's,
Hmm.
I guess, his path to success. And
Mm.
I really appreciate for him that it never mattered to him that I was a daughter and not a son. I was his child, and as his child was going to do well in maths and science, so didn't
Mm.
experience any sort of sexism or discrimination in my family, which was lovely. And my mum as well. So my mum's Japanese, so she came over from Japan, and English is her second language. And I think only in my recent years I have realized how incredible that is to do something like that. So she teaches Japanese in New Zealand now, and yeah, those my parents had a huge influence on shaping the person I am today. Definitely inherited some of their traits, particularly the
Mm.
stubbornness, which you might find out more about in this podcast.
I
Yeah,
don't think
and
stubbornness is a bad trait, though, is it? Sometimes stubbornness can be useful, and
yep.
and sometimes it can get in the way. So,
You,
so during your senior high school, you mentioned a moment ago you realised so much about the place of girls and women. that caused you to create the successful startup I've chosen to call it in your Women in STEM New Zealand. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how that happened and how you think you've been able to influence that whole world of STEM?
Yeah, of course. So Women in STEM New Zealand didn't start as Women in STEM New Zealand. It wasn't something that we, you know, from day one figured was going to be this big thing. So this started as my friend and I, her name's Emily, we were in our last year of high school, and we were actually looking at ourselves for what are we going to do after we graduate. And in my case, I was like, right, what are the options for university? There's a Bachelor of Science majoring in physics or chemistry or biology because those were the science subjects that were offered to us. Obviously, the world of STEM is a lot bigger than that, but they don't teach you that typically in high school. And we had a couple of I guess career talks. So people come into school and tell us, oh, this is what I do as a, I don't know, mechanical engineer. But the people who came in to talk about STEM were, with all due respect, they were typically middle-aged, male, and white. Um,
Mm.
and just could not see myself doing some of those roles. Just as soon as I saw them, I just didn't click, like just didn't feel it. And so I was pretty uninformed about what options I had. Um, so as part of a more, I guess, selfish pursuit, it was what career options are out there for me? And then as I started to look, I'm like, surely everyone else has this question as well. Like it can't just be me. And then on top of that, it was also, where are the women? I have no women role models to look up to. Where are they? And so what Emily and I did is we started contacting different women in STEM across New Zealand and asking them a little bit about what their job is, how their pathway, so how they got to that job, and I guess any advice that they'd have for someone like us, so young people, young women today. Um, and originally we were planning to hold a conference, but then COVID-19 came and ruined that. So we ended up doing a website on an online platform
Yep.
instead. And we have contacted more than 100 women in STEM across the country. And we weren't hoping for much of a response. We thought we'd get like maybe 10 max responses back, but actually had an overwhelming amount of support. And so these women all filmed little clips of themselves talking about their journey and what they do as their job and the advice that they have. And so we put all these videos onto this website, which we just called Women in STEM New Zealand, to which also we were amazed that that website didn't exist already. Like if you Google
Mm.
women in STEM, that's the first thing that came up on Google in New Zealand. And so um yeah, that's the origin story, I suppose, of that startup. Yeah.
And where is it today? Like in terms of the reach it has and the opportunity to change things.
Yeah. So at first, it was just something that we shared as part of
Mm.
our high school did projects, impact projects. So,
Yep.
shared it within the school, but then some of our wonderful STEM teachers shared it on their Facebook pages, their teacher Facebook
Mm.
pages. And then obviously the woman that filmed a video for us, we sent it back to them to share with their network. And before we know it, it was everywhere. It was people were, back when X was called Twitter,
Mm.
retweeting it everywhere.
Mm.
And we were looking at the stats of the website and watching these page views hit like thousands very quickly. It's pretty overwhelming actually. And yeah, we were told that a lot of high schools were using it as a resource for their classrooms, which was just, yeah, incredible. So it's still to this day being used as a resource, and the views that we get every month is pretty consistent,
Mm.
which is just, yeah, amazing.
And that's a significant achievement too, particularly in the world of STEM, not just for young women. Today, it seems to me you've discovered your leadership strengths, or discovering, and the strong voice you have. I know you have some stories about how you navigated the rather challenging path to where you are now. Are there some of these stories that you might share that will offer wisdom to other girls and young women to consider as they think about coming into STEM and having a
That's
strong voice?
It's funny you talk about my strong voice and leadership strengths because I have never really, until more recently, thought of myself as a leader. People would refer to me as a leader, but I didn't really believe that I was one. The reason for that, I would think, is that all through my schooling, um, I always applied for those, head student or house leader, those sort of leadership positions, and never ever got them. Um, yeah, I was pretty shattered about that as a kid, I won't lie. But
Mm,
remember in intermediate or middle school, I tried again after, and then found that yeah, once I found out I didn't get it, I actually had a teacher come tell me. I think she was trying to console me, but she said, "Oh, Sarina, it's all right. Um, you're not really cut out for that sort of thing. Maybe you should just stick to what you're good at," which in that time was my studies.
mm,
Um, and as a young, pretty impressionable kid who having a figure of authority, this is a teacher, tell me that
mm,
that wasn't my thing, I wasn't good at that, I shouldn't do it, had a huge impact on my life. I just, if someone's older than you, someone your teacher is telling you that, it must be true because they're right.
mm,
They teach you things. Um, and so that I think had a significant impact on my self-confidence and the ability to believe that I could have been a leader. I tried again in high school to apply for the head student positions, and I didn't even make the shortlist,
mm,
which again sort of fulfilled that prophecy of, "Damn, maybe that teacher
mm,
was right."
mm,
Um, And the thing is, I got to university my first year, and some lessons I'm not very good at learning, so I did try again. And eventually, I got my foot into the door. And then once I got one leadership position, it was easier to get the next because
mm,
then you could just say that you were a leader of
mm.
that club, so you can, apply for other things with that experience. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
so sorry.
So maybe that's an example where stubbornness paid off.
Definitely, yes. It's stubbornness or maybe not wanting to listen to authority sometimes.
And also overcoming that shattered self-belief. And for most 14 and 15-year-old boys and girls, being told that by an authority figure is quite shattering because you think, well, what does that mean for me in the future? The message there isn't there for those of us in older age groups in authority when we're dealing with young people. During university, I remember when we first met, you have had many interesting and exciting opportunities offered to you. I think there are a couple of ones in there that are really worth highlighting. Would you like to share a couple of those that you got to do outside of perhaps your studies?
Yeah, so I did a lot of stuff outside of my studies. Sometimes I felt like my degree was actually the side thing. Um, so probably the two big ones to highlight for me were which one should I do first? So in my third year of university, I got accepted into it was called Unite Camp 2030. And so that was getting a whole lot of young people from across the world, so aged between 18 and 35. So 150 young people around the world to come into New York City to look at solutions for the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. For me, I'm very passionate about number 4 and 5, which is quality education and gender equality, and particularly in putting those together. Um, and so that was incredible in itself. I also was very fortunate and I had the opportunity to speak at Global Goals Week and moderate a panel. So that was a huge highlight for me.
Mm,
Um, but what was really interesting was I was talking with all these other young change makers from across the world. And at first I felt very out of place. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not entirely sure why I'm here. And sort of just winging it as I go. But talking with these other young people who I just assumed had it all together and they were just, all their ducks were in a row, um, they also didn't really know what they were doing. That is the I guess the issue with trailblazing is that you are blazing the trail, so you don't actually have a set
mm,
direction. And that was really comforting to find out that there were others as well who were also quite ambitious and were doing really cool things in their community who yeah, didn't have it all planned out. They were just figuring it out as they went. So that was
And that's about it's about not having a blueprint, isn't it? You know, somehow we think there's some blueprint out there that if only we had that, we could navigate our way. And then, as you said, in that event, you just went, well, maybe I've got to create it.
yeah, yeah. And I think I'm hearing now as I come out of my adolescence into adulthood that adults also don't know what they're doing. So everyone doesn't know what they're doing, which is a quite reassuring kind of. Yeah, but
Well, I have to
the
tell you, at the other end of Korea from you, where I am, yeah, sometimes we don't know what we're doing or we don't know what we want to be when we grow up. I think some of it is that, you know, we always think, oh, well, when I grow up, I'll be this. And you get there, but then you go, well, maybe I want to be something else. So it's just iterative, perhaps.
yeah. And the
So,
other, oh, sorry, I was
yeah,
just gonna say that. So I was mentioning two different experiences.
yep,
The other one was, which I'm quite proud of, if I'm honest. In my final year of university, mind you, all through my years, I'd done a lot of outreach. So going out to schools and talking with not just young girls, but boys as well,
mm,
about the career options, and particularly in STEM, available to them and showing them what that was about.
mm,
Um, and so organized a lot of those events as well. And so in my final year of uni, I had the US Embassy reach out to me on behalf of NASA, like space NASA rockets
mm,
and stuff,
mm,
which was crazy. And they were asking about wanting to hold an outreach event in New Zealand because they were coming over to visit to celebrate the anniversary of the Opportunity rover on Mars. And it was, yeah, I won't go too much into that, but I think the lessons that came out of that, at first I'm like, why did they pick me of all people? Like, what yeah, didn't think myself qualified enough. But then realized after talking with a few people that they reached out because I was the outreach expert in New Zealand,
mm,
which I didn't think I would be an expert in anything at that age. But there's two things to see here. The first is NASA aren't in New Zealand. It's an American company, so they don't know much about the New Zealand, I guess, education system and the outreach space there. So in that case, yes, I would be more of an expert than them. And the other thing is, yeah, so that's the New Zealand, the local space, but then also the STEM education space. I've sort of talked about those two together,
mm,
but yeah, I guess I was the expert, and that took a bit of comprehending for me to realize that you don't need to be the oldest person in the room or have the most experience to become the expert. I could be the expert in, like, even now in the
mm,
workplace, the expert in what do young professionals want in their career. If you're
mm,
30 years into your career, you're so far removed from
yeah,
that, you can't speak to that anymore. But at this point in my career, I can speak to that. So yes, I
mm,
am the expert in that space.
mm.
So I think the key lesson there is that you can be the expert regardless of how much experience you have or what your age is. It's
Mm.
just, yeah,
And do you think some of that's also about having the wisdom to know when you're the expert and when you're not? And so when
yes,
you're not, it's to stay away, it's to back out of that and let the experts have the opinion and lead that forward. And sometimes that's a skill that all of us have to learn is when it's not our turn.
yeah. And sometimes you don't realize that until, yeah, or sometimes you don't realize you're the expert until other people
Mm.
point it out to you.
Yep.
So you don't walk into a room assuming that you're the expert either. That's not a good idea.
All of the above. I'm keen to hear about how you believe your career is developing and where do you think you're making a difference now? And what is it about your choice that might influence other young women to think about engineering or even your specialty?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in that, so I'll do my best to
There
answer
is.
them.
You choose whichever one you'd like.
Yeah, so I'm currently a systems engineer, as I mentioned earlier, which still don't really know what that means. I don't think anybody does. It's a very generic sounding title, but yeah, so at the moment working on the rail and transport network in Melbourne. And I think something that I really love about that is it's a bit of everything. So I to work with a lot of different disciplines and teams. So systems engineer being like bringing all the subsystems together. So when it comes to the rail network, that would be talking with the track team about, the tracks, talking with the civil team and the structures team about, the stations and how those are being built, talking with the environmental team, talking with the, I don't know, the overhead wiring team, because a lot of trains and trams have that overhead set up, and then the signaling team about train signals. And so I get to keep learning in my, I guess, in my job, which I love. And the other thing to consider as well, and this is probably addressing that last question about influencing other young women and young people, is once you do your degree or once you pursue any, whether it be you doing further education or vocations or trades, you're not locked into it. So I thought that, oh, I studied mechatronics engineering, which means I'm in a very niche field like robots and automation and AI, and that's all I can do. But that's definitely not the case. It sort of opens me up to a lot of things. And yeah, the degree that you do does not lock you into doing that specific job once you finish university, which I didn't really understand until, yeah, probably the final years of my degree. Because when I was picking my major, I was like, this is going to dictate what I do for the rest of my life. I need to make the right decision. But turns out it didn't really matter that much. So I think that's something that I want young women to consider when picking a pathway, is just find something that you're passionate about or sounds interesting. It doesn't need to be, oh, I'm going to pick software engineering because, oh, actually, when I was picking my major, everyone was talking about software engineering being the thing to do because we need more software engineers, yada, da, da, da. I didn't choose it because I was pretty new to coding and didn't really it wasn't something I wanted to major in, but some people chose it because of the career prospects. But then we get to the end of our degree and suddenly it's, oh, the software market is saturated. We don't need any more software engineers. And so I think there's definitely, yeah, a lesson there as well about just genuinely pick something that you are passionate about because you'll find a job in it somehow.
Yep. And speaking of the passion, you mentioned a moment ago, your passion about education and gender equality from the Sustainable Goals, the UN Sustainable Goals. How do you think they come together? Well, I suppose I'm going to talk about gender equality. You've got getting more women in STEM and the education. How do you think that promotes or takes us closer to gender equality? Do you have a view on that?
I do actually. I think a lot of people see STEM as just jobs. Like they're just jobs. They pay you and you just that's your contribution to society. But uh, people don't seem to realize that our scientists and engineers have a massive impact on, well, society as a whole and the decisions that are made, whether it be the more sort of physical infrastructure that you see, or whether it be the non-physical stuff. So, for instance, at the moment, you've got your technology and AI, and they're all big talks right now. Um, and people in those, I guess, leadership positions in particular are making big decisions. But the problem is there aren't many women in STEM as a whole. And then also we in every industry we lack women in leadership. And then in STEM leadership, you put those two things together and it's like, where are the women? And we need diverse perspectives and voices when making big decisions that impact wider society. And so, I mean, yeah, that's that. But
And
in
so
my
that would
opinion,
roll
yeah.
out into science too, wouldn't it, Sarina? Where if we don't have enough women who are into scientific research, then even the things that are researched may be skewed against women, in terms
Yes.
of research projects and everything. It's really interesting that if we don't have equality of gender around decision making, then it's always going to be a bit skewed or off, perhaps.
Yeah, and from a more technical standpoint, on both, like say, one example from science, one from engineering. In science, you see now that we're hearing about the impacts of medication on women because it was only ever tested on men. The same way, like the classic engineering example is in car crashes when they were first testing like how cars or people would be impacted by a car crash. The test dummies were always modeled after men. and not women. And so, I mean, that just goes to show that women, because the women weren't in the room when they were making these dummies and when they were designing these cars, or not enough of them to have a voice, they just get left out of the conversation. And so the moment you have, say, for instance, 50-50 women and men, it's a bit of a no-brainer to include a woman as a test case in these situations. And so it's the importance of having that representation and diversity in the room when designing these things.
One of the things that upsets me most is the way seatbelts don't, if you're a driver, don't always work for women. And you just think, well, maybe there was no woman in the room when those seatbelts and the way they sit on the female body weren't in the room to make that. There's many, many examples of that, aren't there? What do you think's the biggest barrier for women in STEM?
There are many barriers, so I'm just gonna pick one that I think is not talked about much, because we talk a lot about the barriers of women in the workforce and the barriers of, getting women to do STEM degrees or pick STEM jobs. But the problem starts very early on, because, if you want girls in high school to pick STEM degrees, but they can't do a STEM degree, or it's really difficult to do a STEM degree if you haven't chosen the right subjects. So then you go to that middle school age where they're picking the subjects. So there's a key point there, but it goes back another stage as well, when, let's say, the primary school age or really, really young, and so I might delve into this real quick, but when growing up, this is very generalized, but young boys, when they make a mess and, fall over, hurt themselves, make mistakes, it's just a very boys will be boys, it's, they're making a mess. It's a boy thing. But then girls are sort of expected to be neat and tidy and have, nice handwriting and be good at, I don't know, looking pretty and stuff. And you sort of set this expectation really early on, for a girl to develop a bit more of a perfectionist mindset. And initially it's like, yeah, okay, what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that the boys develop this growth mindset where they know that they can fail and they can get up and try again. As the girls sometimes become afraid to try at all if they know that they're not going to succeed. And that sort of comes into the subject selection when, people are like, oh, physics, calculus, maths, it's all really hard. If it's hard, they're not going to choose it because they know they're not going to be good at it. It's people try to say, oh, it's because, all their friends are doing this other thing. They were doing art, so now they want to pick art. And maybe that's a factor as well. But I do, from the research that I've read, there is a huge impact on how we raise our young boys and girls to, develop that mindset early on.
And that perfectionist streak does get in the way, as a maths educator many years ago, gets in the way of tackling problems, looking for solutions, and the fear of doing it in case you get it wrong. And then that permeates all the way through, particularly those areas where solutions are the outcome, in all of the sciences. So yes, I hear what you're saying there, and I do think it's a big problem still for women and girls in the education space. And so then that brings a barrier to getting the numbers that we'd like to have to get that equity.
Speaking to that quickly, something we notice as well is going into university is in engineering, there's a certain sort of set of grades that you have to meet. And for a lot of young men, if they just make that cut off to get into engineering, for instance, they'll do it. They'll be like, yeah, I got in, I'm going to do it. The girls, on the other hand, the girls feel the need, or the young women feel the need to do really well in order to pursue it. If they just make the cut, most of them don't do it. And you notice this in grade distribution in universities and the STEM subjects, where the women are typically outperforming the men because the women who were on the sort of the lower end of the curve just choose not to do it at all. But pretty common narrative that you hear.
Yeah, and it'll continue to be that until things change. Much of the dialogue globally and locally is about the need for systems to change. For young women to be empowered, to have a voice and be heard, how do you think society and government systems need to shift to be able to open that door for women and girls, particularly young women, adolescent girls and young women, to be heard like you were in New York all those years ago?
Yeah,
Mm.
probably ties into a lot of what I said earlier about letting, at that young age, letting young girls be very curious and let them make mistakes and give them new things to try and not to assume that they're not going to like it because, you know, well, let's say, yeah, don't assume that a girl isn't considering STEM because there's a reasonable chance she doesn't even know what it is. So we need to provide our young women and young men as well. We need to provide our young people with the knowledge and information so that they can make an informed choice about their subjects and their career. Um, yeah, so just as I said, providing, yeah, information is power and also knowledge is power, I'm pretty sure is the saying, and not making those assumptions and letting our young girls make those mistakes and try figure out things for themselves, problem solve through trial and error, etc. Yeah.
Mm. And it's okay to get dirty. And also,
Yep.
I think a lot of today's parents, the Gen X and younger parents of today's primary school age children, particularly are engaging their children in a non-gender specific way. That everyone gets dirty, everyone plays with trucks, everyone plays with dolls, whatever. Just trying to keep it non-gender specific, and particularly in building a family and society where jobs, how do you allocate jobs in a family, and so on.
Yeah.
It's okay for the girls to take the rubbish bin out.
Yep.
I've just done that this afternoon myself, so it's always okay. You received a Zonta International Women in STEM Award, along with a number of other awards and recognition. How have these helped you along the way with your leadership, your education, and achieving your goals?
Yeah, there's two sides to that, I suppose. The first, the very, very obvious one is the financial aspect of it. Receiving awards and scholarships allowed me to really focus on my both my studies and then also the extracurricular pursuits that I had, because I was working part-time throughout uni, and so having that extra, I guess, financial support meant that I didn't have to do so much work and got to, yeah, really spend time on the
Mm.
things that I felt were important to me. The other part that people don't probably realize as much is the validation that comes from it. Because for me, I was just doing my thing. I was just, doing things that I was passionate about. And when I saw this award through Zonta, applied for it, not really thinking of it too much. It was, oh, just put yourself out there, apply for things, because that's sort of how I was going through uni. And then my, yeah, I guess application got through at the club level and then the national level, and then before I knew it, I was, oh, you received this international Zonta International Women in STEM Award or scholarship, and I just remember thinking, oh, somebody somewhere has read my little application and thought that I was doing a good job, which was it means more than I can explain. It's
Mm.
that validation. It's just a even if it's just a pat on the back in one form or another, it's a that I'm having an impact on someone's life and to keep going. And sometimes when it's things are really tough and uni's getting to me and I'm in the middle of exam season, I'm like, why am I doing any of this at all? But it's having that validation means a lot. Yeah.
Mm. And that, if we roll that all the way back to where you started, about some of those messages you received in middle school about stick with what you're good at, and you were stubbornly not going to do that, and then the validation has come as a result. If you wanted to draw it that way, that's how I'm choosing to draw it anyway. And you see that it does come forward when you're good at more than just your studies.
Yes,
Mm.
definitely.
So, what are your personal hopes and dreams?
Oh, it's a big question then.
This is the
I
big
mean,
life existential question.
all right, let's go. I mean, this is a very maybe slightly arrogant and naive hope and dream I have, but in my career, I would like to make my way to the top of that corporate ladder. Well, that's a very crude way of putting it, but I would like to see myself in leadership positions within the engineering sector, of which, as I mentioned earlier, lacking women desperately.
Mm.
Um, And once I get there, because it's something I would like to do, but I want to make it easier for other young women to make their way, to sort of pave that path. It's that whole
Mm.
trailblazing thing. Mind you, I'm not the first to do it. Like there are some incredible
No.
women up there already. Um, but I would like to just, I guess, continue paving that path, show that there is, that path exists and really highlight that to young girls who are considering doing that sort of thing. And, you can't be what you can't see, even if I don't entirely agree with that quote, to be honest, but
Mm.
to some extent it holds true. And that's what I would like to do with my career. And then in terms of the community aspect, I'd love to continue just, yeah, inspiring young girls or young women to consider STEM careers, and not just because, selfishly I want more women in STEM, but
Mm.
also so that these young women can they can choose something they want to do. If we show them what STEM is like and they're like, yeah, no, that's not for me, that's fine. At least they made an informed choice. I would hate for a woman to go pick something and then get to the end of it and realize this STEM thing is really cool. It's all like engineering is so cool. It's all this
Mm.
problem solving, but I didn't know about it. And so I've sort of missed that boat. Mind you, it is never too late to jump on the boat, but it's, yeah, making sure that young women have that information to make that choice. And that's something I'd love to continue doing as I progress through my career.
And then that brings more women to the decision-making tables like yourself, so that we get
Yep.
more equity there and better decisions.
Yes.
I think you and I agree on that at least. What's your message you'd like to leave with whoever's listening today?
This is going to be very silly, but the be stubborn thing, if you want to frame it as perseverance or, any of those big fancy words, go ahead. But I think if you really, really want to do something, just go ahead and do it. It's People are wrong. People will tell you things that you can't do it. It's What do they know? It's your life. So just go do it anyway if it's something you genuinely are passionate about. I think I'm going to leave my message at that.
Sarina, it's been a delight getting to know you prior to the podcast and now during our conversation today. And I'll just say the sky's the limit. And for yourself and other young women like you. And I look forward to the day when you are in those leadership positions, making all the changes that you wish to make. Zonta, thanks you sincerely for being part of this podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today, Lynn.